Welcome to the Minnesota Hospice Radio Show. My name is Ken Hagelin, president of Minnesota Hospice. And joining me today are two incredible colleagues I have had the honor of working with in the hospice field for several years. They each have amazing life stories along with extensive experiences as hospice educators and end-of-life caregivers. They're also certified in advanced care planning as Honoring Choices facilitators. They are Reverend Debbie Meckley, chaplain and spiritual care advisor, and hospice social worker Heidi Simon, MSW and licensed generalist social worker. Thank you guys for being here today.
It's always great to be here.
Well, we're finishing up our 5-part series called Lifting the Veil, Revealing the Spiritual Truths About Dying and Death. We are on our 5th and final episode of the series.
Yep.
And today's topic is titled, The Gift of Your Legacy Through Honoring Choices. Now, just to remind the listeners, you guys have been doing this live as an experiential workshop over the last several weeks. And I tell you, the people that I'm talking to, I've gone there and I'm talking to people that attend it. They're just completely overblown by the experiential workshop that you guys put on. It's been just fantastic.
You know, we knew that this is information that people need.
Yeah.
We're all curious about the known and the unknown. And we knew that they needed this, but boy, people were like, wow, we really needed this. And there are people who couldn't make it here. When are you doing this again? Where can we find this, information? So It exceeded, wouldn't you say, Heidi, our expectations?
It did.
It was just a delight to see the people that were impacted and the conversations that were happening and the sharing and the caring. And
Yeah.
We all, looking at dying and death as an advisor, that it would also be informing our living experiences and our choices, which we'll talk about today. But that, I think, was the biggest takeaway for most people was I didn't really expect that if I'd really opened myself up to a conversation about end of life, that it would really impact the way that I'm living. Mm-hmm. So that was wonderful.
Well, I think it was one of the things that anybody who is caring for someone who's at end of life, they've been through the process and the mystery surrounding that and the implications, and there's just so many things that it took you guys 5 weeks to get through the topics, and yet people kept saying to me, I need more. I need more of this. So we'll talk more about this at the end of the show, but this is a program that you guys are reaching out to the community with, and we want the listeners, if you have an interest in having you guys present this at one of their events or at some kind of a program, to reach out to us and let us know. And we'll be giving out our information throughout the show today after each break, and people can let us know if they're interested in looking more at that. And I would encourage them to do that because it is a powerful series and an experiential workshop. So, All right, well, let's jump into today's topic here, which is the gift of your legacy through honoring choices. And you guys, as I mentioned earlier, are Honoring Choices facilitators. So you know what you're talking about. So it's great to have experts here on the subject. Well, we'll find out. No. So Heidi, why don't you start us off?
Well, thanks. We really wanted to focus on legacy because when we say that word or even think about what that implies, it's pretty big. But at the same time, we wanted to also acknowledge that it can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be, because legacy it has many expressions, it has many possibilities, and it's ever changing. There's a fluidity to what legacy is. And so being able to connect that with the fact that we all are in a position to make some really impactful choices as we move through our end of life, and how those choices and conversations then come right back around to our legacy and have an impact on that. So this was really exciting for us to do.
Yeah, I'm reminded of while we introduced this conversation about legacy and how I think that culturally we think it has to be this big thing that we're leaving behind, whether it be monetary or an empire, but it can be anything from an empire to a saying, a simple saying or a story that somebody shared that stays with you. I was sharing a story that one of my uncles used to tell, and he got so into it, and he would talk about tip, tip, tip to the tall grass, and I'll never forget that. that? It was 50 some years ago. Oh gosh, I'm dating myself, but it was a long time ago. And that's what I think about when I think about him. My mom had these sayings that I will forever remember, and they make me smile. So it's everything in between, and it's never too late to plant seeds of your legacy.
Right.
We're constantly putting those little saplings, those little seeds, those thoughts that allow us to experience something and to share that experience. Every time we share, we're creating a legacy. We're sharing a piece of ourselves, and that's what legacy, I think, really is about. And that was what we focused on.
Right. And I think we can even honor those who have already passed on. I think of an example, my mom has a cookbook that my grandmother put together, and none of us met her. She made her transition before we were even born. But her little writings and notes and just the way that she put that together, and she included newspaper clippings about who caught some fish on this certain lake, and those kinds of things start conversations. And pretty soon, those stories that we weren't necessarily a part of become a foundation for us, and they give us something that person has to offer, even though they've made that transition.
And don't you think, and from some of the comments that day were, if you look at it that way and you have that perspective about your legacy,
Right.
you can kind of relax into who you are.
Really?
And be less critical and judgmental about, where you've been, where you are, and where you're going, or what you're taking, with you, or giving back, or paying forward. I think that we can take that pressure off and just be.
Yeah. We talk all the time about how it's often the little things, right, that are big.
Exactly.
We included in this, because of that, we talked a lot about owning our own story. And so to quote Brene Brown, she says, when we own the story, we can write a brave new ending. And we really wanted to include that because, there's no one ever going to be, ever has been like us. We are so unique. And our stories are also so unique because we move through our life experience in very much our own way with our own idea of what, we're going to get out of that. And I think oftentimes we can look at our story and it's just a focus on one chapter of that, something that we're not really settled with or doesn't make us feel good. And so we fixate on that. And so because of that, we don't want to share it. When actually, the more, we see through this experience that the more we share stories and the more we talk, we see that we actually do have, so to speak, a ripple effect, regardless of what the experience has been, but that when we share ourselves and everyone around us, it's just a richer experience because there's a realness to the fact that life is messy and none of us are going to come out of this perfect.
Right. And I continue to reiterate that as much as we're talking about end of life and what that might be, or the third act, for many of you who might have listened last week, we had a video from Jane Fonda talking about the third act. There are three acts, the 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90. And I bring that up to say that as much as it is about what we want living to look like at the end of life, it's how we're living now. That's how we create that, how we can create the ending to that story. We've talked a lot about reconciliation with self and with others, with culture, with whatever's going on in our lives. But for most of us who are taking part in this workshop, we're in the third act or fastly approaching it. And so creating a brave new ending is much easier than we may have thought it could be. And so the importance of actually being able to do that, because that's a new beginning. We're always creating these new beginnings, and that's a way to do that, to create a new story, a new ending.
Yeah, and I think about the caregivers, as we mentioned earlier, we always want to honor them and bring them into this conversation because so many times we have caregivers who are still raising their own children. However, they are that advocate and support for their parents.
Exactly.
And so that is, in that act itself, is a legacy because their children are watching how they're navigating this, and it's not easy. It's a lot to take on, but, just allowing ourselves to just accept the fact that we are doing a beautiful thing in whatever way that looks, because we're not comparing it to anybody else's, but it's still being observed.
And it's individual.
It is.
And
One of the funnest things that we did during our workshop is to ask our participants to tell us, we put up a slide and it said, now, remember who you are. and it talked about what will you leave behind, and they were able to just start. At first, it was like, I think people were really thoughtful about, that idea of legacy. So how big or small is that? And I don't have this, big thing that I've done. But then as we started talking, we really realized the things that were coming up were memories. I think the first thing someone said is memories, and time with family, music, photographs.
Family dinners.
Yeah. So it's really the day-to-day things that we all know. If we think about moving through an end-of-life experience with either a loved one, or for us, in our daily work that we do, when we hear those conversations, usually it's about something specific to that person, whether it was a meal they cooked or a joke or a habit that they had. That's really what brings everyone that joy and laughter. Yeah. Maybe they were stubborn and didn't want to be told what to do. I hear that a lot because, we have some really strong, a generation is very strong and independent thinkers and movers, and that comes up a lot.
Well, we talked about, too, some of those monetary things and the meaning behind them that we would leave to.
Yeah.
Can't forget about those.
Right.
Let's talk more about that, because I was there, and it was fantastic to hear these comments. You are listening to the Minnesota Hospice radio show, and that concludes our first segment here, and this will be continuing on the gift of your legacy through honoring choices.
This is Pat with PJW Automotive in New Brighton. I've been in business long enough to know that if you want to stand out, you better be the best. That's why I've assembled a top-notch team of automotive specialists who do the job right the first time. Bringing your car or truck to PJW Automotive is an investment in the future of your vehicle. Try us once and you'll see it's worth the drive to PJW Automotive. One exit north of 694 on 35W and online at pjwauto.com.
Hi, it's Tom inviting you to the Blue State Ball VIP reception on Saturday, March 10th at the Blaisdell. VIP starts at 5:30, where you can meet and take selfies with me, Norman Goldman, and other AM 950 hosts. The reception is a hosted bar with Butler Past hors d'oeuvres, great music from Paul Metza, and signed book giveaways. Then stick around for general admission at 7. So come mingle with me, Norman Goldman, and other AM 950 hosts during the Blue State Ball VIP reception. VIP tickets are at am950radio.com. I'll see you at the Blue State Ball.
Hi, I'm Matt McNeil, and I want to encourage you to join me weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. for the Matt McNeil Show. It's a Twin Cities-based full hour of talk where we discuss what's going on in the state and in the nation from a Minnesota perspective. We'll be joined by a lot of great guests, and we'll take your phone calls. Interact with us on the Twitter page, at Matt McNeil Show, the Facebook page, Progressive Citizen X, The Matt McNeil Show, and on email. Comment at am950radio.com. The Matt McNeil Show, weekday afternoons at 3 right here on AM 950.
Moe's Tax Service on Ford Parkway in St. Paul has been preparing tax returns since 1971. They're one of the most successful independently owned tax services in the country, with a diverse team of highly trained and screened tax preparation experts. Tax laws and forms are always changing, and you need someone who's a dedicated tax preparation professional. Visit www.mohstax.com. That's MOHS tax.com. Or give them a call, 612-721-2026. Moe's Tax Service. They work for you, not the IRS.
Connections Radio Show is all about tapping into our hardwired hunger to connect. We examine meaningful connections to ourselves, our community, and the world around us. By opening the door to innovative insights by a wide variety of interesting guests, we'll make the connections to something bigger than ourselves. Join me, Lori Fitz, your host of Connections Radio Show, and together we'll make the connections. Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Burger Moe's is the perfect neighborhood gathering spot before and after Excel Center events or anytime. Moe is serious about burgers, offering 20 fresh, never frozen varieties. Burger Moe's also offers delicious appetizers, soups, salads, as well as unburgers, dogs, paninis, shakes, and desserts. Not to mention more than 60 beers on tap and happy hours twice daily. Burger Moe's is located at 242 West 7th Street in St. Paul with plenty of free parking and online at burgermoes.com.
Hallelujah, you were an angel in the shape of my mom. When I fell down, you'd be there holding me up. Spread your wings as you go. When God takes you back, he'll say, hallelujah, you're home.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Minnesota Hospice Radio Show. My name is Ken Haglund, and I'm joined by Reverend Debbie Meckley and hospice social worker Heidi Simon. Before we jump back into today's topic, titled The Gift of Your Legacy Through Honoring Choices, which is the last episode of our 5-part series titled Lifting the Veil, Revealing the Spiritual Truths About Dying and Death, I want to remind our listeners that you can reach us by phone at 612-930-3339, by email at radio@mnhospice.com, or online at minnesotahospice.com. So last segment we talked about owning our story, our uniqueness, the 3 acts that we have, the 0 to 30 years, 30 to 60 years, 60 to 90 years. And I heard one person say that's our first segment we learn, the next segment we earn, and the last segment we return. So learn, earn, return, and those 3 segments, and that was really helpful. And we were talking about part of the experiential part of the workshop that we had with you guys on Sunday, and how people were talking about legacy and what was the things. And I remember one person said, I think it was like acts of kindness. Mm-hmm. And I think, as you mentioned before the break here, Heidi, we're all strong, independent, and we got all this ideas about legacy. And sometimes, as you were mentioning, and that the audience, I think, was understanding, it's some of these simple little things. It's the recipe card, or it's the note, or a saying, or something. But an act of kindness was really caught me when they were brainstorming about that. So. Anyway, wonderful segment. Let's start the second segment here. Debbie, I know you wanted to kick this off.
Yeah, we left off in the last segment talking about remembering who we are and what we leave behind, anywhere from stories to simple sayings to possessions. I had a patient that was younger, 49, and it was so difficult for her family to talk about the funeral and to talk about what the flowers and the poetry and the scripture, the pallbearers, all of that. And so we met every week, and we would create a list of the things that she wanted to be able to create, so then she could have the conversation with them, not to give it to them after she passed, which is sometimes a choice. Right. But in this instance, it was also her possessions, some of the things that were so important to her, from jewelry to letters to pictures. And we created a list. I helped her with a list and who they would go to and why it was the significance of that, how impactful it had been, and why she chose that particular person to give it to. So that was a legacy and a gift that she gave of herself that they couldn't all come together and do, because it was, for them at the time, emotional, and it was hard for them to lean into that pain. And so they had chose not to lean into that pain. So we helped her do it herself. All the way down to, we've talked about, cremation and taking our ashes and having a tree planted. What kind of tree is that? And where is that tree going to be? Things like that are really important to let people know, those kind of monetary things. And, as we move forward in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about Dr. Ira Byock's book, The 4 Things That Matter Most. Heidi and I like to call them the 5 things that matter most. We've added one to that. And, the first one in that book, and these 5 things that we're going to talk about here are our experience as well with everyone at end of life. What is coming up for them? What is triggering for them? What is most important to them? What matters the most? And that first one is, please forgive me. What is heavy on your heart? That maybe now, because as much as it is at end of life, we talk about living. How can we live better so that we can die better? Because in our experience, in our hospice work, we see that people die the way they lived. And if we can live better and lean into these spiritual aspects of our own pain while we're living, and while we're healthy, right, how much better that would be for us. So please forgive me. Is that something you can talk about now? If you don't, you can certainly wait until end of life and have that conversation. But how do we move through that? What's heavy on your heart? And we've found that oftentimes words are the least purveyor of the truth. Sometimes that's writing it down. Maybe the person that you need to ask forgiveness from is no longer with us, or maybe they do not want to be in your presence. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility.
Yes.
You can still forgive them. You can say that out loud. You can speak those words out into the universe. You can speak it to another person, to yourself, or put it in writing and journal that. Or visualize that conversation, how you'd want it to be. How does it sound? How does it feel? What are the expressions on the face? Who's holding each other? So please forgive me is, as we have talked about, is number one on the minds. Forgiveness is number one out of all the 4 aspects of pain. 56% of what is on somebody's heart and mind is forgiveness.
It is. And just as we were saying earlier, I think that's a significant part about being able to own that story and then, kind of let go of what no longer serves you and write the next chapter, or rewrite.
Or create the new ending.
Exactly, right? So then on the other side of please forgive me is I forgive you. And just thinking about forgiveness in general, just that whole act exists at our heart center. Because anytime we run something through our mind, we could talk ourselves out of there's a million reasons why you shouldn't do something. But when we really hold that in our heart center, it has a different feel and it has a different purpose. And so, as you mentioned, Deb, that is the number one thing that people hold on to, is wanting that forgiveness, whether it's for themselves or someone else. Because, like I said earlier, being human is messy. It's muddy. We have all kinds of things that happen in relationships, but at the same time, sometimes we could even be stepping into a story. We may not even have been physically here, but there's a generational story that exists that we just take on. And so then we just kind of continue on with that, and we recreate patterns in our circles, whether they're family or friends or wherever we are. And so I think being really aware of where that exists and knowing that in some way we've all been dishonored, we've all been let down, we've all been lied to. On the other side of that, if we're really honest with ourselves and introspective, we know that we've been an accomplice in those very same behaviors. And I know we've mentioned on this show before that when we are mindful of that idea of forgiveness, that we're existing in forgiveness at every point of our day and our life with people that we've never even met, because we do and say things that we don't necessarily have any idea that it would be offensive or harmful or hurtful to someone, but they've held that space for us anyway, and they've looked at us like the being inside of us is just so good intentioned that we wouldn't hold that feeling, I guess. And that if we deny that, we deny so many things. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a conversation we have with the person. We're not denying or condoning something that's happened. We're just acknowledging that, how is that benefiting me to hold on to that, and how can I move forward?
Love it. Good stuff.
Well, the music cues us. It's already the end of the second break here. We're coming right back after a short break to continue our discussion on today's topic, the gift of your legacy through honoring choices.
Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me, go make yourself some friends or you'll be lonely. Once I was 7 years old.
Hello, I'm Dr. Vladimir von Surikov, the director and president of the Museum of Russian Art, which hosts the finest collection of Russian art in North America, as well as an award-winning gift shop, Izba. Unique gifts, artworks, and artisan-made products are sourced from artists and jewelers who use traditional Russian materials to create stunning pieces for purchase. Izba Gift Shop is on Facebook and Instagram. Our museum is at tmora.org. Visit Izba Gift Shop for that special gift you will cherish.
Tune in for Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence.
Coming up, misogyny.
Traditional gender roles have changed over the last half-century.
Yet misogyny shows no signs of dying.
Do you think the Me Too movement is changing the landscape?
Maybe, but there's already a Me Too backlash.
Misogyny. Next time on Philosophy Talk.
Every Sunday at 8 a.m. and again at 5 p.m. right here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Hello, humans. This is me, Ellie Krug, with Ellie 2.0 on Monday mornings at 7:30. This Monday, I'll talk about a group of idealists in real time, the Parkland, Florida high school students who are reshaping the landscape relative to the sale of assault rifles. These kids, most unable to even vote, are doing what others have been unable to do. get us focused on guns. I've got a vision for a better world where everyone has a place at the table. LE 2.0, engaging in real on AM 950.
Hey, Tom Hartman here. Join me for brunch after the Blue State Ball on Sunday, March 11th. It's your chance to pick my brain about all the big political issues over a delicious brunch at the Nicollet Island Inn with a handful of other AM 950 listeners. Tickets will be available at a silent auction during the Blue State Ball, but if you want to guarantee your spot at the brunch, we have a limited number of tickets you can pre-purchase now for $150. Just call 952-946-8885. Details at am950radio.com.
Do yourself a favor and check out the amazing cuisine of eatlocalminnesota.com. More than just a website, eatlocalminnesota.com provides you with the best local and independently owned restaurants in the Twin Cities. Serving family favorites in Minneapolis since 1964, Milda's Cafe is a great spot for breakfast or lunch. Wake up with their delicious Eggs Benedict or biscuits and gravy and savor their many great lunch options. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Milda serves authentic Finnish pasties. Open weekdays 6 to 3 and now on weekends 8 to 2 on Glenwood Avenue, 4 blocks east of Penn. Specializing in Szechuan and Peking cuisine, the Great Wall Chinese restaurant has been a local favorite since 1981. They offer one of the most extensive menus in the Twin Cities. Favorites include the sesame chicken, imperial beef, and Peking duck. The Great Wall restaurant is located off 45th and France with takeout available too. More at greatwallrestaurant.us.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Sam Turnberg. Today will be mostly sunny with a high near 49, turning to clouds tonight with a low near 37. Tomorrow there's a chance of drizzle with a high near 45, and Monday we could see rain and snow with a high near 36. The Eat Local Minnesota Restaurant of the Week is Victor's 1959 Cafe. Come enjoy traditional Cuban recipes in a relaxed, casual, and festive Cuban environment. Located at 3756 Grand Avenue in South Minneapolis. And for more details, visit eatlocalminnesota.com.
Come and visit once or twice a month. Soon I'll be 60 years old. Will I think the world is cold? Or will I have a lot of children who can bore me? Soon I'll be 60 years old. Soon I'll be 60 years old. Will I think the world is cold? Or will I have a lot of children who can bore me? Soon I'll be 60 years old.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Minnesota Hospice Radio Show. My name is Ken Haglund, and I am joined by Reverend Debbie Meckley and hospice social worker Heidi Simon. Last segment, we began talking about Dr. Ira Byock's book, The 4 Things That Matter Most, and we added a 5th special bonus thing on top of that, and we got to the first 2. The first one, Please Forgive Me, and the second one was I Forgive You. And Debbie, why don't you take us into the third thing?
Well, the third one is thank you, giving somebody an opportunity to show their gratitude. And, the dictionary defines thankfulness as being either pleased or relieved. And that can be a piece of it, but gratitude is the quality of being thankful, being ready to show appreciation or to show a return of kindness. And so thank you goes a long way. Gratitude can get you anywhere you need to go. And that goes from both sides of saying thank you.
And next, of course, is I love you. And we all know the power of just that word love, but I don't know that we always have the opportunity to really be aware of how it can be expressed and how unique that can be. So I wanted to share a story that has been really impactful for me since I read it, and it's from Dr. Ira Byock's book, and it talks about Gunter and his father, and his father was experiencing a decline, moving through his end of life, and Gunter actually approached Ira Byock as a colleague and said, I'm going home to have this conversation or to do these things, and my dad and I just don't have that kind of a relationship. I don't know how, we're going to move through this. And so he encouraged him to, utilize these tools that we're sharing today. And here's part of their story. He talks about going back to see his father and that his father wanted to discuss practical matters. There was his medical directive to complete and some property and business issues that he and his stepmother had asked to be handled. So imagine, he says, my surprise when he asked Eddie, who was a caregiver, to have some time with me alone. I had no idea what was coming. Son, would you please shave me? He asked. I didn't know what to say. It was completely unexpected. For weeks, he'd been shaved each morning by my stepmom or an aide. Thanks to our conversation, the conversation he had with Ira, he recognized that this was an opportunity. I know my father well. His illness hadn't dulled his mental faculties, and he would never do anything without planning every detail. There was no doubt whatsoever in my mind that he knew exactly what he was doing. He had deliberately waited for me that morning. I realized that my father was really asking me to touch him. Gunter gathered the towels, the shaving cream, and a basin and set about the task. An aide helped him transfer his father into a special reclining chair used for shampooing residents' hair. Gunter said that seeing his father reclining in the chair, eyes closed, completely helpless, brought him on the verge of tears. But he postponed them because he had a job to do. He took his time, starting with a hot towel like the barbers used to do. He told his dad it was to soften up his beard, but he really did it because he knew it would feel good. He decided to make the shaving into a ritual, a way to say, "I love you" to his father, and to say goodbye. He draped the towel over his father's face and let it sit. The two men barely spoke, but they were communicating. My father's beard felt like sandpaper under my fingertips. As I massaged his face, I felt the firm ripples of his jaw muscles soften and noted that his shoulders relaxed under the towels that I had draped around him. Gunter said it felt a bit strange at first to touch his father's face in such an intimate, tender way. He took his father's old shaving brush, cup, and special shaving soap and worked up a rich, smooth lather. It had been many years since he'd used a cup and a brush rather than shaving foam that came out of an aerosol can. But it came back to him. The smell of the shaving soap, the same brand that his father had used all of his life, transported Gunter back to his childhood. As he stood behind his father and shaved the front of his neck, chills ran up his spine. He realized that they were replaying a scene from his childhood. My father's birthday present to me when I was 13 was a Gillette safety razor. And that morning, he showed me how to shave for the first time. He stood behind me in front of the bathroom mirror and showed me how to scoop the lather up as I shaved my neck. It was an important rite of passage for me at that time. I realized that we were conducting a rite of passage for my father. And how his father responded was mostly he just rested with his eyes closed. For a moment, I thought that he might fall asleep. I finished by washing his face and massaged him again as I applied aftershave cream. As I sat him up in the chair, Gunter said, "Thank you. That feels much better." I made a point of looking into his eyes and said, "You're welcome, Dad. If you'd like, tomorrow morning I'll bring scissors and trim the hairs around your ears." "I'd like that," he replied. And Gunter talks about what an experience this is because they had come full circle. So he starts out shaving his father, and because he was there every day, pretty soon he's feeding him. And then next he's helping toilet him, dress him, helping him with a bedpan, and ultimately took on all the cares for his father in that last 2 weeks of his life. So I think, what this tells us is that just because the words aren't being spoken doesn't mean that there's not communication going on, because we know that oftentimes there's more communication without words. Sometimes they can actually kind of get in the way, and just to be present and to be involved and allow whatever's going to come can really express that love that you have for one another.
And that story comes from a father and son right here in Minnesota.
Yes.
As well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the fifth, and Heidi and I added this along to the four things that matter most, is goodbye. Saying goodbye is coming full circle. It's completion. It's settling in to the final part of that journey. And so everything that we can do as caregivers, as what we like to refer to as anamkaras, in the old Celtic ancient times they were called anamkaras, soul friends, death counselors, everything that we can do to help them release and to move forward is divine. It's just divine for them. So saying goodbye is that complete circle, and it allows us to breathe. Yeah.
Boy, that goodbye part I think is so important. As I read Dr. Ira Bach's book, and the fact that you guys interject that is so important. It really provides a conclusion, a permission. There's so many things wrapped up in that single word goodbye, or two-word goodbye. I really am impressed with that. And that really hit home to a lot of people in the audience when you guys talked about those 5 things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things, too, that when we take on a patient in our hospice practice is that we do ask them, is there anything that you're incomplete in? Is there anyone that you need to complete with or say goodbye to? Anything that's left undone. And even sometimes things or events are a way of saying goodbye, completing them, not just the words goodbye to a specific person. So it is very important.
It is. And we see the beauty in bringing someone onto hospice earlier, because sometimes the goodbye they're saying is to the ability to walk or the ability to do things that they used to be able to do. So there are a lot of variations of moving through that as someone moves through their end-of-life experience.
Yeah. So we'd like to move on to the next part of our of the program, and this last segment was honoring choices. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we're facilitators, trained facilitators through Honoring Choices of Minnesota, and it's an excellent website to direct people to as a resource. They have videos, they have articles, they have the 3-page form and the 8-page form of Honoring Choices, which is a way for you to initiate conversations. And I'm just going to tell you that right off the bat where to get them. They're at honoringchoices.org. So that I don't forget that at the end of this segment. But, Honoring Choices is about advanced care planning, and that's a process to help you think about, talk about, write down your choices for your future health care and decisions, and also contemplating who that person would be that you would have as your healthcare agent to help you to instigate those conversations and your care when you can no longer speak for yourself. And that it is an important conversation to have, to begin to open up that dialogue, because if you don't tell anybody, they don't know. Right?
And you might have someone in mind that you would naturally go to as your spokesperson. But having that conversation ahead of time gives the opportunity for them to be able to honestly say whether or not they want to take that on. Because many times you might think of a close loved one and they may not want that role. They may just know that they're going to need to move through their own grief experience and their own experience of assisting you in another way. And so to be able to identify, okay, well, who's another option for me then to be making some of these difficult choices?
Yeah, that's so true. Because we sometimes think that asking somebody is an honor. That they might be thinking, oh, I'm just honored to do that and say yes and not. In fact, I told the story, and my husband was in the audience, that it was just an assumption on my part that it would be him. And after going through the training, I actually looked at you that day and said, oh my God, it's not my husband.
Right.
And I went home and I said, I have something to tell you. And I said, I just don't think it's you to be my healthcare directive. And he looked at me and said, oh, thank God. It wasn't for him. And so I was able to choose somebody else to do that so that he could actually be by my side.
Right.
And so there are some really things to think about that we might take for granted that are pretty simple choices, and to revisit that. So opening the door to those conversations is more about not focusing on how you want to die, because we don't have a lot of control over that, but it's about asking, how do you want to live until you die? And the only way to do that is to talk about it and to choose to open the door to those conversations. And we found, also that being able to do that gives your family a gift. The more involved that they are, and to know it helps reduce conflict, complications with grief during and after, and it helps the survivors have better relationships after, because things really get triggered when somebody doesn't know and everybody's guessing as to what that person might have wanted.
Yeah. And our emotions can really get in the way, because everybody grieves differently. Everybody has an idea of how they can and should move through something, and to give people room to honor that is very important. Yeah. That's part of that legacy, is what we're creating for our loved ones when we leave.
Yeah, and so we had a estate planner, an attorney that was there that day, was able to answer some of those questions. A lot of great questions came up, things that I learned things that day that I didn't expect to learn. So there is more than meets the eye to this topic. So we really do encourage you to go to Honoring Choices of Minnesota's website and look at the resources that they have there. They're great resource, and it's a very user-friendly form. And we got a letter that I want to share when we come back from the next segment, because it's really important about how we helped honor choices for a patient of ours who was able to stay in her apartment. And it was a letter that the family wrote us and actually published it in the New Prague Times.
That was just amazing. Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing that again. That was quite the patient and caregiver that you guys were supporting during that process. That was wonderful. Well, we're up against the clock here. Let's return, and we'll continue our conversation on advanced care planning, and we'll read that letter, which I think will be really interesting, and we'll continue to go from there. We are going to finish our third segment here, and we'll be right back after a short break with today's topic, the gift of your legacy through honoring choices.
Packed up the photo album Matthew had made, memories of a life that's been loved.
While shopping for a fireplace insert at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, I was amazed at all the choices. Not just gas, electric, or wood burning, but also built-in or freestanding, and options in every style from antique to modern. The staff really listened to us, explained the options, and helped us choose a fireplace we absolutely love. Now it warms our hearts and our home every winter. Thank you, Woodland Stoves, for a great addition.
Hi, I'm Peter Solak, putting in a word for the EPA Burn Wise campaign. It has important information about clean burning fireplaces. This is an important part of our mission at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. We know that the fireplace has to work. Work with your life, work with your living space, and also be environmentally smart. Come see us. Learn to burn wise. We have over 35 working units on display at the corner of Riverside and East Franklin Avenue in Minneapolis. Visit our store in person or online at woodlandstoves.com.
Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, out of the ordinary products and services since 1977.
Crooner's Lounge and Supper Club is delighted to offer its spacious facilities for your private function. From weddings, retirement parties, business dinners, or any special occasion, Crooner's combines a dedicated full-service special events team, an award-winning chef, and a beautiful lakeside ambiance to make your event a resounding success. Visit croonersloungemn.com to learn more about their private dining options, or call 763-571-9020 to get a quote for your next event today.
This is Gregory Rich from Habitation Furnishing and Design. Whether you love Sunday evenings or you see them as the downward slide into the work week, you could probably use a drink. That's why I'd like to invite you to tune into a new program called Drink in the Style. Beginning Sunday, March 4th at 5 p.m., Drink in the Style will be 1 hour of interior design and small business conversation, all while enjoying cocktails created by a local mixologist. Drink in the Style, starting March 4th, and brought to you by Habitation Furnishing and Design.
Tom Hartman here, letting you know that better energy is finally affordable. With All Energy Solar, Minnesota's #1 local home solar provider, you can go solar with little or no money down. Qualified property owners could even see a return on investment in less than 1 year. Excel Energy's Solar Rewards Incentive Program is available first come, first serve, and federal tax credits are available for a very limited time. Schedule your free solar assessment today. Visit allenergysolar.com. That's allenergysolar.com.
Home ownership is one of the biggest financial commitments most people ever make, so why not keep informed? Tune in each week to the House Geeks Twin Cities Real Estate Show, sponsored by Bricks Real Estate, Sundays starting at noon. Kirk Duckwall and Chad Vandelot, the House Geeks, will keep you up to date on Twin Cities market trends, tips for buying and selling, the newest technology, and much more. You can also catch them online anytime at housegeeks.com.
Hallelujah, you were an angel in the shape of my mom. When I fell down, you'd be there holding me up. Spread your wings as you go. When God takes you back, he'll say, hallelujah, you're home. Fluff the pillows.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Minnesota Hospice Radio Show. My name is Ken Haglund, and I'm joined today by Reverend Debbie Meckley and hospice social worker Heidi Simon. Last segment, we were talking about advanced care planning and the importance of doing that well and doing that early. And Debbie, you've got a letter from one of our longer-term patients that was written by her daughter. And I was wondering if you could share that with us.
Yeah, I'd love to share that. This is a letter that was written and published in the New Prague Times. It says, to the editor, no one wants to think about the possibility of leaving their home as they age. But after experiencing this situation along with my mother, I have a better feeling and understanding of what may be ahead. For herself, she's speaking. My mother was not able to stay in her home due to mobility issues. She started this journey at Malastrana Rehabilitation Center. The physical occupational therapy that she received was top-notch. Once completed with the support of social workers, Mom moved into a new apartment at the assisted living side, which went very smoothly. Of course, it did take some time to get accustomed to her new surroundings, but soon she developed relationships with residents who tend to her care, and they tend to care for one another. More importantly are the relationships developed with the staff. Those staff members became an extension of family for her. She could determine the amount of services that were needed, such as managing medications, exercise, and meals. The activities arranged by the Recreation Committee are amazing. So many things to do and places to go. Then my mother became a client of Minnesota Hospice, side by side with the assisted living. The different services offered, such as chaplain, massage, personal cares, companionship, etc., were so beneficial to my mother. She was able to stay in her apartment alongside the many other healthcare workers. The love, care, and support and friendship, the compassion and respect that each program showed our mother, as well as her family, was so appreciated. Mom was allowed to keep her dignity and make her own choices. Those choices were honored. We felt so confident and assured that our mother was well cared for and loved. New Prague is so lucky to have the services of Malastrana, Assisted Living, and Minnesota Hospice in this community. What the employees do and how they treat their clients really brings comfort and reassurance to families. Keep up the good work. So one thing that I want to point out about this too is that this patient came on sooner than later. She was able to have all the benefits of end-of-life care and the benefits of hospice early, and all of those services inside of what we offer. She was able to experience that and find comfort in her palliative care through her hospice experience. So just wanted to share that's a perfect example of honoring someone's choices and following that. She made sure that her family knew what it was that she wanted, and they followed it to the T. We worked very closely with her children for months, and we watched them honor everything that she wanted to become.
And that took the pressure off them to have to figure out what it was.
It sure
so
did.
They could really be in the moment and enjoy their time with her.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there were 6 children, so that could have been some chaos and some, discontent, but it wasn't like that. It was very good. So
then moving back into our legacy episode, we really gave our participants, after they had explored all of these 4 things that matter most and the idea of saying goodbye and thinking about choices and legacy, we gave them the opportunity to release. What was it that they felt that they needed to be able to release in order to be able to move into what that legacy means for them, maybe even following through with having an advanced care directive if they didn't already have one. I think it really...
and living better now.
Right. And so what we did was we gave them the opportunity to write something down on a little piece of paper.
Magic paper.
It was magic. And then they were able to bring it to a bowl that then those things were burned. And so the idea of that, fire, as we talk about, is our most powerful cleansing element. And so they were able to release that. And I just thought it was very powerful.
Very symbolic. The fire is very symbolic of cleansing, and the burning was powerful for them. So they walked away from this actually setting a new intention, and letting go. That was one of our segments, was releasing and allowing, and I really saw that people did this releasing and allowing a new chapter to open up.
Right. And it's always great in experiential opportunities because you can kind of decide for yourself how much you want to say and what your involvement looks like. So just because you may not be putting words to something, if someone else in that group setting is, you really feel that connection, like, okay, I resonate with that. I don't necessarily, you can kind of decide where your comfort zone is. And I think it actually even expanded for some people.
Yeah. So keep in mind, if you're part of any organizations that you think may find this beneficial, and of course we all do, we all need to have this conversation. And the truth is, we kind of talked about them being courageous, but there wasn't anything too courageous about it. Would you agree, Ken, about opening up? Everyone was just very open.
Yes.
And felt light. And it's a subject that we have been taught is heavy, but we did not present it that way. It was very light. It was, we had people laughing, people really thinking about, wow, I want to live better because I really do want to die better.
Well, I think it was very contemplative, introspective. I mean, the music you guys had, the backgroground, the slideshow. I mean, that's the one thing our listening audience here is missing out on. Is that amazing slideshow you guys put together. The images and the imagery was just amazing. And I think I was a part of that process about putting down on a piece of paper some of the things you want to leave behind and move forward with. Boy, and I noticed people were really writing down a lot. It wasn't just a word or two. I mean, they were writing down. I thought, boy, is that ever a catharsis to just get that out? And you guys create an environment that allows for that. So again, I was just blown away by what occurred on last presentation. Well, doggone it.
Here we are.
We're up against the clock again. We got so much more that we could talk about. But I want to say that as a part of concluding this show today, I want to thank you guys so much. You put a lot of time into this series. You've been doing parallel radio show and live experiential presentations, but thank you guys so much for that. Reverend Debbie Meckley, chaplain, spiritual care advisor, and hospice social worker Heidi Simon, thanks for being here to share your expertise and insights with us on today's topic titled The Gift of Your Legacy Through Honoring Choices, which is the 5th and final episode of the 5-part series called Lifting the Veil, Revealing the Spiritual Truths About Dying and Death. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Please contact us with any questions or comments you may have regarding today's conversation, or let us know of topics you would like for us to discuss on future shows. You can reach us by phone at 612-930-3339, by email at radio@mnhospice.com, or visit us online at minnesotahospice.com. Next week, we'll be broadcasting live and taking your calls on the air to answer frequently asked questions about hospice and end of life. Thank you for listening to the Minnesota Hospice Radio Show, and until next time, live like you're dying.